Monday, November 4th, 2024, Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board meeting. We are all here except for Denise, who noticed to me that she's running a little late, but she does hope to get here. So we have a quorum. I don't know of any changes to the agenda, so the posted meeting stands. You have received Jim's meeting notes, which of course now are being expanded with all of the notes for the latest conversation. Everybody had a chance to look at them?
Yes.
Any comments, questions? May I have a motion to approve the meeting notes? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. And you have the October 21st minutes in draft form. Any corrections, additions you wish to make?
I move we accept.
Thank you, Edna. Second, please. Second. Thanks, Sharon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Any correspondence or announcements? I don't have any. Gretchen has placed on the table, and I encourage you to take a look at it, a proposed schedule for next year. We'll maybe take a minute at the end of the meeting to talk about it. And in particular, we need to talk first about the January 7th meeting, which we can discuss the details later. But we'll take that up, I think, at the end of the meeting. So we have 3 new applications this evening, starting off with the Grace Bible Fellowship Church, 6959 Route 9, site plan, special use permit, and wetlands permit renewal. Lauren?
Good evening, I'm Warren Smith, architect, representing Grace Bible Fellowship Church. I would say this isn't really a new application. In fact, the planning board has been considering it off and on for maybe the better part of a decade. The last time we had, I think, a full approval was a few years ago, and at that time, the primary outstanding issue to be resolved was with the health department. And sadly, that seems to have continued to drag on as an issue. There are 2 things that we're concerned about. One, which we all knew, we needed to replace the existing septic system with a new, much larger one, which is going to be out in front of the building. And they didn't have any problem with that. We've got, they're dealing with stormwater management and other things for the parking lot in the back, but the health department didn't have a problem with that, but it was always a question of, what was it a question of? I want to say that it had to do with the tank, and did it need, because it was a pump system, did they need an emergency generator should the power go out and not be able to operate the pump? And our feeling has been that because you need an emergency generator, because there's no, we would just basically shut the building down if there's no power. You don't need to have everybody there using the septic system. So there's alarms and other things, so you know that the system is not operational. But an emergency generator needs to have a huge propane tank and a lot of other issues. And then the other question had to do with the kitchen. And because it was relatively large, so people could bring in their trays of food made at home and serve when they're doing a harvest meal or a holiday meal, the health department seemed that it goes to commercial kitchen, but we're very clear they're just residential type stoves. There's no serious cooking going on, they're reheating things. So we were doing whatever we could to make them convinced that we didn't need to have a commercial kitchen with all the issues that brings in bear. And I do think that Rod Morris and LRC has made some headway with that, but Dave Pierce, who's been there for years representing the Rhinebeck area, has retired, and so we're negotiating with a couple of other people. I'm hoping that approval is imminent. The truth is, the Grace Bible Fellowship Church isn't in a position to build this right away. They need to raise the money, and churches always have to struggle, every kind of congregation has to struggle to raise enough money and get commitments to do it. But this has been their dream for some years. The congregation hasn't grown, but the sanctuary and has a sort of meeting hall, and the goal is to have some, basically, at one point they wanted to have some school, but they're not going to do that. But a couple of classrooms here for Sunday school, a large meeting room other than the sanctuary, which has fixed seating for events after church itself, and then a kitchen. So again, they could do occasional meals. They've never had a goal to do events like rent it out for weddings or things like that. It would only be a member of the congregation if they wanted to have a wedding there. But that's not at all what it's about. It's just the ability of the fellowship and community with the congregation other than just in the sanctuary. on Sundays. So that's the plan. They would love to have an approved set of plans so they can try to raise money, and maybe before we run out of approvals and have to start the process again, be able to get going with it, get the building permit. But at this point, we're simply trying to get a current set of approvals in place to finish up the health department and let them start raising the funds they need to actually build this, if they can do that. So sorry if that was a little disjointed, but happy to answer any questions.
Warren has explained why it's back. Essentially, the approvals have expired, and so we're looking whether or not reapprovals can be done, and they could not. We've already done a bunch of extensions, reapprovals. So it's back and forth essentially for a reapproval to start the timelines all over again. I took a look at it. There are no change to the project. I do believe the planning board, it's up to you obviously, but you could defer the need for public hearing per section 125.77F of the town code and just go with the formal resolution tonight if you want to. Again, nothing has changed, it's really just a paperwork issue and a timeline issue. But I've provided both a procedure resolution and an approval resolution for your consideration, but I don't have any comments. It's what was been approved.
Jim, just to clarify, we could waive site visit.
When you waive the public hearing,
The public hearing
just
is
goes forward, right?
Because the same application was approved a year and a half ago-ish.
And I have no recollection or
Because
date.
Craig and I did the site visit, I remember doing the site visit.
Yeah.
It can't be 15 years now.
I have no recollection of any public comment on this application over the entire decade.
No, I don't think there was a public comment. We went through archaeology and wetlands and all the other stuff, but I don't believe the public.
Was there any kind of an issue with the shared drive? Were you realigning the drive?
It's actually not a shared drive. It's sort of parallel to a drive that goes back to another property. But the driveway that comes in is specifically for this property and reach its parking lot.
Okay.
I don't see any issue waiving and moving forward personally, just from the history that we've had with this application.
I would be perfectly happy going ahead with the draft conditional approval unless someone here has an issue with that. Any reason to hold this up? Okay, Jim, let's go to the draft conditional approval.
Do we have to take a separate vote on waiving the public hearing or not?
We have to, but it couldn't.
We can't urge. You have to
It's
make that
really
motion.
an action item, so I would suggest it.
Okay. We'd like to make a motion to waive the public hearing. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the motion carries. Now we'll go to the draft conditional approval.
Yep, so the approval resolution for the board consideration tonight, the application of the Grace Bible Fellowship Church, site plan special use permit, for construction of an addition to the church, modification of the parking area of the site improvements at 6959 Route 9 from the RC5, reaffirming the actions took to under seeker, which coordinated environmental quality would be not required, based upon the submitted information reviewed previously, including reports from the planning board members, APAC and CAVWAC, finding the work is consistent with the objectives and regulations in chapter 125. With respect to the application for for special use permit, to authorize the construction, finding the work and intended use is consistent with the general standards for special use permits, and granting the special use permit conditioned upon site plan approval. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finding the work is and intended use is consistent with Town Code Chapter 125 and approving the application inclusive of materials by Warren Smith dated March 17th, 2022. We will waive the public hearing and associated elements per the discussion we just had. Authorize the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the 3 conditions listed there. And just note, as we have been, that in taking this action, the planning board authorizes the planning board secretary to provide the resolution to the applicant along with details on next steps required to finalize the process, authorizes the town zoning enforcement officer or zoning administrator or building inspector to issue the required permits, and that all plan sketches and other materials submitted that were submitted to the planning board have to be the same as they are submitted to the building department, which will not be a problem around changing.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion,
Second.
second. Full board, Craig?
Aye.
Edna?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Joe? Aye. And I vote aye.
Thank you.
The second new application this evening is from the Brinks Groups, 5834 Route 9, site plan review. Warren, it's not
Yeah,
so
at the
unusual to
sorry,
have you
still,
back here.
we are still. So this is a very interesting historic house. It is right across Route 9 from Southlands, and so it's certainly adjacent to the Hudson River National Historic Landmark District, and it is individually noted as a very early house. Some of you that have been here a while may know that Marilyn John Hatch moved into it in early 60s and did a lot of renovation to it and learned a lot about historic preservation in the process. It's a very small house, and despite the fact that it's very simple, it has some beautiful details inside. In particular, the door leads into a hall, which isn't really a center hall, but apparently the house was originally designed so there could have been a wing put on the left to make it a center hall. So it goes straight back, and there's actually a door to a stairway that winds up to the second floor, which is kind of a holdover from Dutch architecture in the earlier period. But on the right-hand side, those two windows are in the living room, and there's really a beautiful, very simple mantelpiece there, and a built-in cupboard on the side. And again, for such a simple house, it has rather noble presence. So the current owners are the Brinks Group, who are, or at least they're representing Fannie Mae, it's owned by Fannie Mae. And Brinks Group represents them, and they're trying to fix it up so they can sell it to someone, because Fannie Mae is not in the business of renovating historic properties. They really don't like to be stuck with things that go along with historic properties. So this is where the Brinks Group has come in. And so we documented the house, and we're suggesting that some modifications of removing things that were added later be considered. There is this enclosed area along the south side, and it appears originally there might have been a smaller porch at this end that leads to a door into the original kitchen, which is in the basement. And in fact, the current kitchen is still in the basement, kind of at one end, but there's a very large cooking hearth with a cast iron crane and so forth that now that subsequently had a wood stove in it. But that's all that chimney there that you see on the south side of the building. But that blasting area outboard was apparently added by Marilyn and John. It's like a sort of a greenhouse adjacent to the house, but it has very low ceilings, and it's not in very good shape and doesn't add much to the historic character of the house. So I suggested to the Brinks Group that they consider removing that. I don't think it would be a detrimental, and I think that the subsequent drawing in this sheet, in this set, shows it without that. The other question that came up is this front stoop, and it's certainly possible that at one time there was a porch. Marilyn told me that they couldn't find any evidence that there had been an original early porch. And as you know, many colonial houses were built without a front porch, and they were added at some later date, either early 18th or even late 18th century with somewhat more ornate sort of Victorian style hotels. We're proposing at the moment just to put back basically this deck or stoop up a couple of steps, which was there pretty much for the whole time that the hatches was there. But if we uncover any more information that suggests an earlier report, we might ask you to revisit or consider that. But the photographs show the house as it is now, again, with this blasting area, which is pretty hard to stand in for most of its height because it rises up as you walk along that south wall. This addition in the back was here previously. It was a bathroom. I think at one time the original bathroom in the house, and it's sort of interesting sort of 1940s fixtures in there. And Marilyn had some photos of when they raised the back roof, because I think originally this came down lower and would have been too low for this space, and they had a lot of water damage. So they did a lot of work during the, 40 years or so that they lived in the house. But the point is just that now it's stable, it's not leaking, and the point is just, again, to fix it up, preserving as much of the original exterior detail and interior detail work as it can be done to make, and then basically offer it sale, because Fannie Mae doesn't want to own it. There are original windows in the house, and the proposal is to put storm windows over them to maintain the original sash, because there's some old glass in there. There's some nice features that we want to preserve. The most unfortunate thing about the house is that it is very close to Route 9, and it's up a very steep driveway. And that all came about when Route 9 was widened into 4 lanes, because originally, there's a more gradual driveway up there. But it's a little hazardous getting in and out of that driveway, and that's a challenge for Marilyn and John Hatch, and it'll be a challenge for anyone living there. But once you do get up here, there's actually a nice property. There's a barn that was before you last year, I think, for some re-roofing and renovations. There's a little shed here, and there's what looks like a playhouse over here, and those structures are all extant and will remain. So it's actually a nice piece of property when you're up there, but it's you know, Route 9 is right here, and people are zooming by at 60 miles an hour, so getting out of that driveway can be a little challenging. But it's a beautiful house, and the goal is to preserve it. Answer questions?
So I'll go first. Just had a couple of questions for Lauren about looking at here. So took a look at the photos, and it looked like there were some fake shutters on there. I didn't see those in the sketches. The idea to take those off.
There
shutters.
were-
There's some on some windows, not on all of them.
Yeah, from the 1960 era photos, there were shutters up here. I don't think the shutters are non-functional. I'd have to look at them more closely, but I mean, we're not a fan of those either, and we could certainly remove them.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
What the plan was. I guess my bigger question is really related to the outside. So if we remove the area,
Outside.
the greenhouse, I guess it was called, right here. As you're just going to regrade the land, it looked like in the photos there is a bit of a slope.
There'll be a little
down
regrading
there.
to keep water from pooling into the wood, obviously.
Okay. And then that would be done obviously to allow for that entrance door that you had proposed here to be able to open.
Right, this is the entrance into the old kitchen, this is the back of that fireplace. This is an odd door. It actually, you step down into it as a utility room. At one point, the hatches created an opening in the stone wall, this is the back of the house obviously, into this later addition, so you can get down there in the basement. But it's all a little bit, you can see this open here, this thick wall. It's all a little bit kept in. So we just want to make sure that it's not going to be a place for water to enter that utility area.
So if we're going to see grading, if we're going to need a grading plan, just to show what it's going to look like after the
Yeah.
fact, so we would need that. Then I just had a question about landscaping or lighting on the exterior. If there are any plans for that, didn't see anything shown. In terms
I
of
don't
exterior.
even recall if there's a light by the front door. It certainly, it is not. I mean, you could add one, it would be a very small light and you wouldn't see it anywhere unless you drove up the driveway. But
If you're going to propose, we just have.
it's not a bad idea to have
See the
a
cut.
little lamp there at the door.
Yeah, so if you're going to do that, we just need to see
And
the
we can
cut.
show that fixture. Yes.
Instead, that's the elevation. And then, you said the playhouse and shed are going to remain, not going to touch that, so it'll just stay as is.
Yeah.
No, it's all right.
This is Phil Bush from the Bridge Group,
Hi,
and
guys.
he can address some of their,
There was the one shed that if we went back before.
the site plan.
Yeah, well, there's a smaller shed down by the, when you go down towards the barn.
Shed here,
Yeah, that shed is completely dilapidated. It's
so your goal is to take that
Yeah,
down.
it's like a, Home Depot one where we did, it's just falling over. So that little shed there, that would come out. It's, I guess like 10 by 16, but it's just a trailer shed,
And you can document that
Okay.
it has no relationship to the
Yeah,
original.
get some photos of that, yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah,
just
the
note
barn
that.
is stabilized and the playhouse is in reasonable shape.
Yeah. And then my last question actually does relate to the barn. So last time we looked at this, you did the roof, and we talked about that, but I don't believe you did the stairs or anything internal. Is that, what's going on the inside?
That was part of our agreement when we weren't going to touch anything.
Right.
Inside that, we were going to let the homeowners, whoever bought the
I
place,
I
they
thought
kind of.
that where we were going with that was
Yeah.
the ultimate buyer of the property would be.
Take care of it.
Would want to.
I just want to make sure we're still on the same
Yeah,
page
we're on the
with
same
the-
page
with
with
the
that. I
inside
didn't want to
garage.
do anything with
Yeah.
the barn.
Okay.
We didn't have to.
Okay.
Basically, what I was trying to.
Yep, I do remember we discussed it would be done in the future. I just want to make sure that the plans are the same.
Yeah.
So that was really for me.
How many bedrooms in the house?
Well, there's a bedroom, we'll call it a bedroom to the back, this side. The bathroom is back here, entered through another bedroom. So the only way anyone could get to that bathroom is, I think there should be a floor plan. Over here. So, yeah, so there's what we'll call a bedroom here, which I think at one time their two sons were in. There's what was the primary bedroom here, and then the bathroom, which is really a later addition. So anyone using this bathroom has to go through this bedroom, which is never ideal. Or you come up, open the door and come up the stairs, and at some point, her two sons were up here, and there's this half bath, which is very substandard, but it has a toilet and sink. And this is just kind of an open area. So, people up here could use the toilet and sink there, but anyone who wanted to take a shower or a bath would have to use here. And then I think John Hatch added a very strange little shower and toilet when they excavated through the wall here.
In the basement.
But it's so small that anybody would find it difficult to use. I don't know if you have any plans to remove it, but it's hard to call it a functional bathroom. I think, again, the goal for Fannie Mae is to do as little as possible and sell the house. So preserving the exterior is very important, but what happens on the interior is kind of, you know.
Well, the only thing I was thinking of, which is, I suspect perhaps inevitable with this, when it gets to a higher, is that we'll see somebody back here for an addition,
Most likely.
is my guess.
Right.
Because of the size, I vaguely remember, it's tiny. You
Yeah.
know, it's really very.
It's a very small house. It's a great starter home for somebody, but if you're going to have a lot of kids, it would not be a good place.
Well, I was just relating that to a future owner deciding what they're doing with the garage as well, so. All right, planning board members, questions, comments?
The kitchen is in the basement.
Yes, at some point, this little kitchen was fitted in here. There is a high window, sort of the grade level out here, but there's a stove and a sink and a refrigerator. And then this, again, was the original cooking hearth. So this was basically used for kitchen and dining. And the living was in the main level, and the rest could be used as bedroom.
And the foundation is in good shape.
The foundation is not in bad shape. This is a very thick stone foundation. I didn't see any water intrude in there. The addition in the back is a sort of beautiful textured block that was popular at one time. But it, again, does not seem to be appreciated.
I saw this property with Marty and
Oh,
Kevin.
when you looked at the barn, sure.
When we looked at the barn.
Yep.
So you were kind enough to show us the house, even though that was not our focus, but you know, we did take a good look at it, but it wasn't done in any systematic way.
Right.
You're the architect of record.
Mhm.
Are you recused from HAPAC?
In this case, I would certainly be.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess HAPAC will do a full review of the history
Yes,
of the
I
house.
mean, they come back to look specifically at the house. I would
Okay.
say.
And I noticed that there were a lot of interior details that kind of seemed very, like there wasn't a lot of paint on them, but they seemed to be an acceptable profile. I talked a little bit, with Marty about that. A couple of the double hung windows were hung upside down with the top sash. swapped.
Oh, is that right? So that's interesting.
So-
Yeah.
It's a really neat and important small house, and I think it would be a shame if it got expanded into something very grand.
Well, I don't think it would ever be anything very grand, but because anything which, should be appropriate to the scale, which is quite small. But I can imagine somebody wanting maybe, another functional bathroom on the main floor, if they're building a two bedroom or something like that.
Or perhaps a kitchen.
And I can consider
on the main floor.
at some point, well, actually, the kitchen, the basement functions. It's it's plenty of space down there, and it has a lot of character. Not everybody wants to run up and down.
Yeah, and I think if you want all those things on one floor, you shouldn't.
That's right, you might have to already have it.
Yeah, and it always gets me about the Austin Minis, and they made a bigger version of it. The whole point is that it's a Mini. They'll make a bigger Mini, and I like what this house has to say.
Right.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we have a draft procedural resolution.
Yes. Draft procedure resolution for the board's consideration tonight for site plan, repairs to the principal structure and removal of the attached greenhouse at 5834 Route 9 within the RSA 5, accepting the application supporting documents is adequate for further review, classifying the action as type 2, which coordinated environmental quality review is not required, being scheduled a public hearing on the application for December 2nd. At 6:05. We will send this to the CAB, HAPAC, and Dutchess County Planning for review, and we need 2 members to do a second.
Well, somebody else can go, and I'll go with
Okay.
CAB.
Okay, great.
We need at least.
So may I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution? So moved. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carried. We will be in touch
Very good.
schedule is like this.
I would recommend whoever goes, we should probably carpool. It's hard to get a bunch of cars up the driveway there.
Well, I don't have a walk. I may be able to cross the Route 9 disaster. Okay, good luck. Let's see, the third and last new application for this evening is that of Stone Valley River Road site plan and special use permit.
Good evening. Mark Berminski. I'm here representing Stone Valley, New York, LLC. They are the owners of property that is actually split by the town of Rhinebeck and the town of Rhinebeck. The town boundary is right here. The property is located on the west side of River Road, right here. And this is the Rhinebeck piece, on the south side of 199. Hudson River's here, River's right here. The property that is under consideration is obviously the southern parcel. The total size is 138.6 acres. This is all part of what was at one time was owned by the Sosnovs. Sosnovs still retain this piece right here. And then the main portion of the structures and buildings take place on the parcel in the town of Rhinebeck. I'll just note that I'm also representing Stone Valley for modifications and improvements to the property in the town of Rhinebeck, which I think Rhinebeck has been advised of that through the various applications that have been made. But so this particular application, I should also note that the entire property was placed in conservation easement. Scenic Hudson holds an easement on the entire property. So this piece here in the town of Red Hook, and then the boundary for the southern piece in the town of Rhinebeck. It starts here, goes along like this, goes here, here, and here. I'll also note that, so this is, these are the railroad tracks, obviously, and then the property owner also owns parcels on the other side of the tracks. They have, there's letters patents for lands underwater. The purpose of this application is to provide a farm entrance to the southern piece. And so that entrance is located right here, right near the intersection of River Road, which is County Highway, and New York State Route 199. Jim, if you could maybe zoom into that portion a little bit, please. Thank you. All right, so, and just for reference, the Borelli's farm stand is located right here. And what I did is, and so here's actually a photo of Borelli's farm stand, and then here's a photo of this section right here. Right now, there is just there's stone wall located on the west side, the west side of River Road, and there's also a fence through here. There's a wooden wire fence that goes along Route 199. It actually comes down across through here. And so I've already been in touch with Dutchess County Department of Public Works because they are the permitting agency for access to the county highway. The state right-of-way ends right here. This is New York State DOT right-of-way through here, and then all work that is being proposed for access and it's specifically for a farm entrance would be under the jurisdiction of the Dutchess County Department of Public Works. Jim, if you could go to the next page, please. So here's a little bit more of the detail for what's being proposed. Once again, so here's 199, here's River Road. Borelli's entrance is right here. You see a stone wall is actually goes straight across like this right now. What's being proposed, and so DPW has a specific detail for a farm entrance, which we're adhering to. It's a gravel entrance, no asphalt, and in this case, the stone wall would be removed in this section through here, and then would be radiused to some pillars, and then there would be a fence that would go back, and these would all tie in and continue like that. What I tried to do in the development of this entrance is I took a drive on River Road and looked at similar farm entrances. There's actually one very similar, and I'm sorry, there'll also be 8 here, that are similar on Poets Walk. There's an old farm entrance there with a similar type arrangement of wood posts and wire fencing along with the gate through there. And then also, just because of the nature of the topography in this area, it's a low spot, proposing some grading through here that allows the water to, this is a drainage area that comes in through here and then down through here. This allows water to freely flow as it does right now. This is all gravel through here. Once again, no asphalt and just with a culvert, and then with the wire fencing continuing through there. I also, as I mentioned before, this property is under easement with Scenic Hudson. So I did reach out to Scenic Hudson and provided this plan to them to take a look at. And I just recently received a letter from Scenic Hudson that they felt that this entrance conforms to what the conservation easement, the intention of the conservation easement. I didn't submit it because I just, got the information, but I'll provide that information to the planning board. So it's specifically an application for construction of an agricultural entrance, modification of the stone wall, and modification of existing wood post and wire fence. And so it requires site plan and special permit. And in the application, I've listed the various special permit conditions that are required.
No, I think Mark actually covered a couple questions I had. We're doing this because it is along Scenic Road. It's historic property. I was going to say, we'd like a copy of the letter, but you've got that, so we'll get that in the file. Otherwise, I think it's primarily just a discussion of the proposed change as it relates to historic preservation and consistency with neighborhood character and similar ag uses along the road.
Planning board members?
Yeah, my recollection of this property is it's currently wooded.
Yeah, there is, yes it is. See, even if you go back to that sheet, to there, if you can zoom into this photo. A little bit more, it's a little blurry, right? So correct, so I stand there near the Rellies, right? And so there's an opening right here.
Okay.
There's actually a farm road that we're going to connect into. There's a small section that will require very little clearing, but in conversation with Scenic Hudson, especially it's Michael Newsom who I've been in touch with. We're going to, Scenic Hudson has a specific laneway that they wanted to utilize as for access for farming. So the intention is very little clearing in order to accommodate it.
Okay. What's going to be cultivated back in there?
So it's hay.
So there's big hay meadows.
Yeah, so it's Kenrick Varelli is going to farm. He's actually farming the property now.
And there, I see there are some building envelopes in another part of the property.
That's all part of Scenic Hudson's easement. I provided the entire conservation easement
Yes, I
document
saw it.
with it, along with, and I think it's actually the third plan that I submitted documents I provided, there's actually a conservation easement plan here also.
So what I'm wondering is the same access point would eventually serve the building envelopes, is that correct?
It would, yes. So if it, changes from just an agricultural use, obviously it would have to change as far as county DPW. But right now, the interest is for farming. There's quite a bit of work that's taking place on this portion of the property.
The other examples that you looked at that were farm gates, do they also have radius walls and pillars, or is that?
They do. Yeah, and actually, if you go to Sosno, I have photos, I should have included the photos. But if you go, let's see, yeah, if you go back to sheet one, yeah. Thank you, Jim. There's Sosno, it's tough.
Sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's like,
Zoom, I have to zoom
yeah,
person.
okay. Right there, that's Sosno Central. It's right there, similar,
Yeah.
Craig. There's one here that is exactly Pound's piece is right over here. They have that. You look at actually the entrance in Red Hook for Stone Valley, it's like that. Obviously, where the gatehouse is, that's a little bit different there. You go further to the north, the first, and I can provide all the photos for that. Further to the north, it's actually on Scenic Hudson, it's on
Okay.
Poets Walk.
Poets Walk. It's on Poets Walk. I tried to, it's classic. It's, the stone wall, radius, and pillar, and then goes to wood fencing, after that. I just tried to keep in character of the area.
Okay. I don't know a lot about the provenance of that particular wall either, because that was kind of put together from fragments of the two properties together and made to look like it would be a romantic landscape for park reasons.
Okay.
So I'm trying to fully understand it.
And I've done enough projects and I've paid attention with the construction of some of
Okay. Yes. I hear you. It's just we give broad leeway to agricultural purposes, and that's, it's essential to preserve the agricultural character of the community.
Understood. And try to be that in consideration, respectful of the area.
Anybody else? We have a draft procedural resolution.
The draft procedure resolution for the board's consideration for the application by Stone Valley LLC for site plan and special use permit. Under Town Code Chapter 125 for creation of farm access road, removal of a portion of the existing stone wall and construction of the fence. A river road from the HP 20, accepting the application and supporting documents set for further review, classifying the action as type 2, according to environmental quality reviews not required. Schedule a public hearing for December 2nd at 6:05. We'll send this to the CAB for review. We'll send this to HAPAC. We'll send it to county planning. It is not within the waterfront revitalization area, it's just across the road, so it won't go there. We do need to refer this to Red Hook, since it's on the town, the property itself is on the town line, even though the action's not. And then we need at least 2 planning board members to do a site visit.
Would like to go.
I'd love to get,
Thank you, Sean. Would like to go, Michelle. Hold on. Sean and Michelle.
thanks for not leaving me alone.
All right. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor? Opposed, abstention, motion.
Thank you.
That concludes the new applications for this evening, until we'll move into the public hearing portion of the agenda. The first up is Alexander Wright, 23 Buick Road, site plan, special use and wetlands permit, tree removal and light brush clearing.
My name is Micah Buckminster, you know me by now. I was just curious if there's been any updates from Hudsonia.
They did call our office, Bright Lions, and a report is expected by,
Okay, thanks. And, yeah, I guess there's nothing to say unless anybody has any questions for me.
When did you say the report is expected?
early next week.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll continue. Unless someone wishes to make comments earlier from the public wishing to address this. Okay, then we'll be continuing the public hearing unless you all have anything you want to.
Would it make sense to, if we had a report early next week, would we have time to review it? And I know there's a lot of parties involved that want to see this move along. Is there a chance to see it in 2 weeks?
2 weeks will take you to the November 18th meeting, which
That's
is
tight.
jammed.
That's tight. Okay.
I really hate to add anything more to that agenda.
No, that's tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so may I have a motion to continue the public hearing to December 2nd?
So moved.
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second and last public hearing for this evening is that of Mike's Tree Service Route 9 site plan review for the use of the front office as a medical office. Good evening. Do you have an update?
I do. Good evening, Seth Stickle with Mark Kaminsky, PDL SPC, here this evening to represent Mike's Tree Service and their application for an amended site plan approval. So just to familiarize everyone with the application, because it has been a little while since we've been here, we are proposing an amended site plan which entails a change in the type of use for what was an approved professional office space to become a professional medical space. There's no change in the existing building which has been constructed in any of the site plan improvements or any of the parking or lighting or landscaping. All of that has been installed. The only change is in the front portion of the building here. What was going to be a professional office will now become a medical office, a chiropractor. We have confirmed with the health department that a chiropractor with 12 clients a day and Mike's Tree Service with 5 employees utilizing the existing installed sanitary disposal system and the water supply well will be adequate. We provided that letter in our revised materials, and we've also provided a little bit of information on signage. When we met in the field a long time ago with Edna and Sean, there was a little bit of discussion about how to go from the parking spaces, which are in front, which are to be utilized only by the chiropractic service, 1 handicap space and 6 additional spaces. All of Mike and his employees park in the rear. That's all of the vehicles as well as the employee parking. So just how to get from this point into either Mike's or around the corner into what would be the chiropractic medical office. And the way that we had decided to go about that, we obviously have a freestanding sign in the front. 1/3 will be for the new chiropractic office. We have provided those materials for your approval tonight. Part of our application is a sign permit. But in the windows, we've decided to place small signage in the windows that would allow patrons who are coming to be immediately when they turn around from the parking spaces to look at the doors and know that they need to go left towards the chiropractic office and straight through the doors of Mike's Tree Service. So our last sheet in our set provides an example of that.
Sorry about it. Hold on. Just grab that.
So on the left, we have the rendering of the building, which has been constructed. As I mentioned, there is that freestanding monument sign in the front, pole mounted. 2/3 for Mike's Tree Service, that sign has been installed, and then 1/3 will be for Rhinebeck Sport and Spine. That sign is indicated there. And then in the windows of the building, 1 at the door for Mike's Tree Service, and then 1 at the window adjacent to that, are less than 1 square foot signs indicating that pines are straight and spines are to the left. And if you actually go over just a little bit to the right, Jim, in this, you'll see the detail for those. They are not really visible at all from the roadway. It allows some directional signage that's window mounted, very efficient. We feel that that's a good approach. So other than that, there are no other changes proposed to the site plan application, just the amendment from, as I said, a proposed business office to a medical office.
And you have the health department approval now in hand.
We do, yes, and provided that copy of the letter to the board in our last submission.
Nothing in. I think we're in good shape.
Jim, could you expand on the window signs?
Zoom in on them or zoom out?
Zoom in, make them bigger.
So the doorway that is adjacent and leads up into Mike's Tree Service has this sign located in it, just about eye level height mounted. And the window that's just adjacent to that on the left will have, go up and around again to Mike's or through to Mike's and then to the left to go to the chiropractor office.
Thoughts, everyone?
I guess I don't get the pines part.
Trees.
Trees. Like trees. I know, I got, yeah. Pines.
It rhymes with spines.
Very cute. What's the name of the chiropractic office?
Rhinebeck Sport and Spa.
So we're being subtle here,
Again, they're less than 1 square foot in size, and they're barely legible from Route 9, or visible from Route 9. They are legible from the parking spaces that are just.
There isn't going to be any sculpture or accoutrement on the signs, the sign frames, branches?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No spines, no skeletons.
No skeletons.
No.
No, unequivocally.
That's the answer.
I don't have an issue, I just, it's such a limited number of people coming in here. I just wonder if the chiropractic office isn't going to be able to tell their customers to come in the front door. I get it, but, it doesn't bother me about this. If you think it's going to provide a clarity that's really important. It's a modest parking lot, and there is going to be traffic crossing each other there. So I guess in the spirit of enhanced safety for the pedestrians crossing the building, unless they stop in the middle of the driveway to figure it out. Anybody have any issues?
No.
Anyone? Jim?
I think this is where we kind of landed before.
Okay. We have a draft approval resolution. I did ask before, anyone from the public? Okay. So I need to close the public hearing. May I have a motion to do so? Motion second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Now we'll go to the draft approval resolution.
Okay, draft approval resolution for the board's consideration tonight for the application by Mike's Tree Service for site plan amendment under Town Code Chapter 125 for use of the existing unutilized space as a medical office chiropractor at 6765 Route 9 within the CBS zoning district. Reaffirming the action is type 2, which coordinated environmental quality review is included. Based upon submitted information, finding that proposed work is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. With respect to the signs proposed and requirement for a sign permit, I'm going to add in, or is highlighted here, the details that were on there since we made the decision that's acceptable. And we'll state that the planning board now authorizes the zoning administrator to issue the sign permit. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finding the work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125, and approving the application inclusive of the materials and planned by Mark Rominsky, and authorizing the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan, subject to the 3 conditions listed there. In taking the action, the planning board further authorizes the planning board secretary to provide the approval resolution to the applicant along with details on the next steps required to finalize the process, and authorizes the town zoning enforcement officer, zoning administrator, or building inspector to issue the required permits. And we just note that all plan sketches, other materials submitted to the planning board must be the same as those submitted to the building department, or they may be rejected.
Motion? So moved. Motion, second?
Second.
I'll hold the board, Mary.
Aye.
Edna? Aye. Tom? Denise? Karen? Aye. Sean?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the public hearing portion of the meeting.
What do you think about switching the next?
I was just going to ask, I would prefer if we would amend the agenda to move to the last portion which we have here, which is the ZBA referral for case number 1063 for Dyer. I'd like to wrap that up and be done with it, so then we can just move into the, if you're okay with that, Jimmy?
Question?
Yeah, I don't find it in my notes.
No. How about this? I don't know. Not so much as just listen to something too. Or just delete it.
As regards to Dyer, and I think at the last meeting, you, if I'm correct, were asking about an outside opinion. We've not heard back from the applicant. I believe we left it at, we were asking the Mr. Raption to speak with the client and determine their willingness or lack of willingness to do that. But as far as Gretchen has told me, they haven't gotten back to us on that at all.
You heard anything from the ZBA on this?
Well, this is the referral, right, that we're getting
Right.
from them.
Yeah, currently, it's been continued at the ZBA, awaiting further direction from the planning board. So at the October meeting, there was no further discussion because the planning board hadn't met. It was like the ZBA met on the 18th, I think, and the planning board met on the 21st. So no action's been taken from the ZBA.
Any opinion provided?
They didn't seem overly concerned by it, but they're, they haven't, that was just their initial impression.
Okay.
We asked them to not close their public hearing.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah, I was just curious if they have an opinion on the project.
Or sometimes you can read the
Yeah, and
temperature.
again, they're looking more at the variances that are requested, so of course a different standard
Right.
that they have to do, but their initial opinion didn't raise any concern.
That was my understanding, like of distance to other property lines and other items that did come up in our discussion that didn't raise any concern with them. I know our purview is different, but I think it's helpful information.
So really, the discussion comes down to whether or not the planning board has, I know it's a little complicated because it's in front of you as well at the moment. But if you have a concern about this that you want to relate back to the ZBA, or if you just want to do the standard, no issues
But I
response.
thought we already dealt with the referral, didn't we?
Well, we gave them an initial response back. I'll have to dig that one up. Let's see.
I believe the initial response was simply saying that you were looking at more information and asked
We were waiting for the
us.
site
So there
visit,
was,
a couple of them.
yeah,
I think
she got one
we
from
were
the site
waiting on
visit.
some things, and we were expressing that we did have concerns, but that we were waiting on other information before we could respond. That's why they continued their public hearing.
And I think our concerns are more on the aspect of, I want to use the word design, but I guess, of having it blend in with the landscape and having it less maybe commercial feeling, which I just don't know if that's, how does that blend in with the ZBA response?
Well, were there also issues raised by the town engineer?
Those would be planning issues. That's where this gets a little complicated.
Because that's what
There's the
Sean
issues of the
said.
site plan, and then the issues of the referral needs to just look at the request for the variance, which is the side yard setback for the location of the court. We're not looking at this like the specifics of the engineering, that Christian was looking at. That's what our thoughts are on that.
But our response to them could indicate that, well, don't necessarily see issues with the variance, we do have issues with the application, and are still continuing to ask for additional information. I think the more you can tell them about where you are, the better off they are in reviewing.
Didn't he suggest that if he didn't get the variance, he would still pursue the construction of the court, but with a different site plan? So kind of the, the
Yeah. I mean,
variance.
you can't see the property, like, there's swells all around it leading to this, and so I think, from my perspective, on the ZBA level, it's okay, but I mean, there's still some design things that we can take up as a planning board to tone it potentially down. I guess is one way of looking at it. On the ZBA, we've approved projects like this all day long and not had an issue with it. On the planning side, it's a different element.
It's, it's the most protected part of the town, according to the zoning law. It's so protected that even the site plan regulations carve out special directions for this district, or this part of town, so that any excavation, any structure at all requires a special permit. There are comments in the site plan regulations about maintaining the natural contours of the land. So this is so far from that. You've got a sloping, very hilly landscape. Everything about the landscape is rounded. The tops of the hills, the lines, of the topography. And so in that, now we have this rigid, rectangular structure right up against a forest. So you've got this like terraced garden, which is very different from a forest, very different from what was there. If you're going to cut into a slope, and make a level area, instead of going like this with your terrace area, you could just go a little bit down, go 2 feet and start leveling, and then go 2 or 3 feet more and then level. But that wasn't considered because we didn't have an opportunity to look at it before they went in there and, cut into the hillside. So those are my concerns.
Yeah, that's
And,
just something.
if it's okay to do this much excavation for a couple of courts, well, what if somebody wants a regulation football field in their sloped forest? How far are we willing to go?
But are those issues separate from the issues that the zoning board will be looking at?
Well, I mean, so for the area variance, overall, they consider the detriment to the neighbors and surrounding areas versus if the benefit to the applicant if it were granted. And, some of the factors that are considered are, impact, if there's an impact to the surrounding neighborhood.
I think it's problematic if we say at this stage to the ZBA that we have no environmental concerns with the area variance, and it comes out that the area variance actually has an impact on the site plan, which we do have issues to contend with. I don't think that we can make that statement at this stage. That
I'm not considering overstepping it. I think there's a balance on the ZBA side. It is protected from their neighbors, but I think there's definitely I think we still raise concerns about the overall size of the potential project. And I think we could craft some language around that. But as far as because from my reading of the ZBA is they're not necessarily totally, obviously looking for some feedback from us, right? But they're not by the project based upon the property lines and the variances they're asking for.
Oh, isn't one of the things that they look at a negative change in the character of the area?
Yeah, I mean, that's like I said, that's kind of like, I was actually just trying to pull it up so I could get the exact
It
language.
seems to me that this would create a negative impact.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that they would look to us for is that type of statement.
Well, you can state these things in this referral back.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can just honestly report, this is where we are. And we continue to ask for additional information and input from the applicant, that the planning board remains concerned about the impact in this particular area of the town. And that we would certainly like to better understand the relationship between the zoning decision and the planning board decision, and how one impacts the other. So if Jim will just craft that.
Okay.
Would you like to, I have, just so I can give you the exact language, would you like to get the 5 factors?
Sure.
Yes.
Please.
So again, it's an overall balancing test between benefit to the applicant versus detriment to neighborhood. Then it's whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby property will be created by the granting of the area variance. Whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method feasible to the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. I can tell you, they will, no matter what, because of where the house is located, they certainly will need the front, because it's situated further to the road, even though it's like 1,000 feet off. I know that the applicant has discussed about, they could probably rotate it so the field is closer to the side yard setback. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, that can be both numerically and in terms of impact. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And whether the alleged difficulty is self-created, which of course that alone won't be a factor, but most anything that requires an area variance is considered self-created.
That's about, thank you.
I just have a question or thought about it. You know, it like dawned on me today. I don't recall who came to the site visit with me several years ago. The impacts that were made to 40 Morton Road, where they built the labyrinth and the amphitheater and this reflection pond and all of that. And I completely agree, and I think that this is too harsh, but I was like, wow, we're so protective of this. How did stuff like that get through? But here we are so protective of this, and there's like so much in the same district. It was just, yeah.
I don't think we should let previous omissions be our guide.
Yeah, just.
They're also very different.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, I think that when we can find solutions to do it better, I think that's a good thing to do, and still try to err towards the applicant's objective in a gentler way.
Well, I certainly, in listening to Ken, feel that there was a lot in there that we're concerned with.
Yes.
So, do we have a sense of what we're saying now? I'm not trying to make Jim write something.
On the spot.
If I could make a suggestion, since that was a lot of information. So, Gretchen, I believe that, so November 18th is the next planning board meeting, which is 2 days before the ZBA.
So we have time?
Yeah.
Which is why we did
So why don't we have Jim draft
I was just
something
gonna
for
suggest,
circulation?
right,
that
that
we
way
can
you
vote
guys
on?
can make sure it addresses your concerns. And then if you give it to the ZBA, you know, even a day before, that will be fine, because again, the public hearing's been continued. So there's not a resolution prepared, because I don't have any directive from the ZBA to draft it.
That works.
Is it fair for us just to point out a couple of our concerns, just so Jim has them noted?
Please.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah, Craig, I guess you know, because I think you both have eloquently said what those concerns are.
Okay.
If you want to,
I'll send it to everybody, we can all.
well, no, I think if you just, or you can just mention it now, so
Okay.
you can, whatever works for the board. I think it's size and length, it's just overall
Yeah,
commercial.
well, as Edna said, it doesn't follow existing contours. I guess as a general statement, it is in conflict with the character defining features of the
land.
and the district, or however we can best craft that.
The other thing that was up in the air, and I clarified with Edna earlier, is we had strongly recommended at the last meeting have to consider bringing in another opinion. And he has not replied to us with that request. We asked him to check with his client. So that is still up in the air. How strongly do you feel about recommending more strongly that that happen?
I thought that's what we did, kind of, at the last meeting.
Well, I agree. I
Just
just,
the way to spell it out.
well, what I'm saying is that we would have to immediately be in touch with him and tell him that we would need this at the next meeting,
Yeah.
so that we can discuss it at the same time. So, do we agree by consensus that we would like Mr. Rafton to seek an outside opinion, a second
Yes.
opinion?
Yes, and I think it'd be helpful, because if not, the next meeting is gonna be Groundhog Day.
Okay. Jim, do you want to give a rough overview of this?
So something to the effect of the planning board continues to request additional information from the applicant and remains concerned about the environmental impact of the proposed changes to the landscape and would like to better determine how the ZBA decision impacts potential planning board decision. Concerns include the fact the project is not following existing contours. It seems to be in conflict with the character-defining features of the land and the district, given the protections for projects located within the Hudson River Historic District and SASS. And have asked the applicant for an outside landscape architect review and opinion of the proposed project.
Is everybody okay with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I move that we,
Wordsmith that in uniform?
yes, that we
I have
accept
a
that
motion.
language.
Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Thank you, everyone. That then brings us to old business, which is the last order of business this evening. Bye, everyone. Have a nice dinner. So this is, of course, Rutledge, 492 Aquacum Road, site plan approval, special use permit, and wetlands permit for common units. Jim?
Okay. Okay, so as everyone knows, we've been working our way through the Seeker Part 2 form for the Rockledge project. We have gone through and reviewed item number 2, impact on geologic features, 6, impact on air, 8, impact on ag resources, 9, impact on aesthetic resources, 11, impact on open space and recreation, 12, impact on critical environmental areas, 13, impact on noise, and did a partial review of item number 15, which is noise, odor, and light at the last meeting. Before we get into this, I just again want to just read a couple things. Just as kind of the overview and introduction to Seeker, just for the order. Stating that the Part 2 and the determination of significance are critical steps in the environmental review process under Seeker. This is the step in which the lead agency must decide whether or not the proposed Type 1 or enlisted action is likely to have a significant adverse impact on the environment. We want to note that throughout the course of the proposed project review process, the planning board has received numerous comments from nearby landowners, attorney representing the adjacent landowners, and members of the public, both in writing and in meetings. They voiced both opposition and support for the project over the course of the evolution of different iteration of the project, which is currently for 3 lot subdivision, 36 residential units, and new buildings, and adaptive reuse of 2 existing historic structures, as well as reuse of other buildings on site for use by the residents. The project was advertised for Seeker lead agency by the Rhinebeck Planning Board and resolution dated June 5th, 2017. Over the course of approximately 8 years, the project has been reviewed, and modifications have been made and examined openly with input from all parties involved. Throughout the review of the project and over the years, the planning board and the consultants have analyzed and proposed and revised studies, designs, and plans from the applicant. The applicant has conducted and completed all the requested studies during the review process, updated materials throughout the process as changes were made to the proposed project, and their studies have been reviewed by the board and the board's consultants. We also want to note that it is important to note that the Part 1 and 2 documents are the forms that we do use in reviewing all Type 1 unlisted projects for Seeker in New York State, and that the Part 1 and 2 forms and Seeker forms themselves are kind of generic general forms that are used for all types of development in the state of New York, regardless of what they are, as long as they meet the Type 1 criteria. Not everything fits neatly into each of the sub-questions and questions, which is why it's upon the judgment of the board and the knowledge of the applicant, your professionals and others, to to make decisions on how the questions should move. And finally, I just want to note that in the Part 2 form itself, it does note that any proposed projects that meet, or that would exceed, a numeric threshold containing a question should result in the reviewing agency checking the box moderate to large impact may occur. Reminder that the reviewer, which would be the planning board, is not expected to be an expert in environmental analysis. If you're not sure or undecided about the size of an impact, it may help to review the sub-questions for a general question and consult the workbook, which we have done on numerous questions so far, and we'll do again tonight. When answering the question and considering the components, consider the whole action, consider the possibility for long-term cumulative impacts as well as direct impacts. And lastly, answer the question in a reasonable manner considering the scale and context of the project. So, with that out of the way, we can get into the next part of doing this review. I think we should probably start with noise, odor, and light, since that was where we left off last time. And then we can talk about which ones you want to do next. So, for item number 15, at the October 21st meeting, we talked about sub-item A. Sub-item A was the proposed action to introduce sound above noise levels established by local regulation. The planning board had found that no or small impact may occur. Sub-item B, talking about the proposed action resulting in blasting within 1,500 feet of a residence, hospital, school, licensed daycare center, or nursing home was discussed, but we didn't complete it. We noted that the applicant was requested to provide some clarification on this item on the potential use of blasting for the project. And we did receive a response letter dated October 21st, 2024 for this sub-items, stating that they will not be used in blasting. We'll get into that when we get into item 15 in more detail. We had also asked for additional information on item number 9, which is the impact on aesthetic resources. We finished that one, but did state the planning board had asked if there was any way that the paint, essentially the paint colors of the structures could be changed to make them blend in further into the landscape. And the response letter dated, the response letter that we got, the response was that the owner applicant and project architects have reviewed the proposed unit color and are considering earth tones, which are darker and minimize any potential aesthetic impact. Updated design documents are being prepared to illustrate this in wood form was submitted to the board. So I don't know that there was an issue with that, but they are taking that question into consideration for item number 9. So we'll go back to item 15, noise and light. Starts on page 7 of 18. Again, we went through item A, where you had found no or small impact will occur. So we move on to item B. And this one, again, is the stated notes are asked if blasting will occur within 1,500 feet. I went through and did an assessment of the seeker part 1, looking at some questions that were not related or noted in the relevant part 1 questions for this specific sub-question. Went through some of the meeting notes and other things that were out there, and noted that there was a comment in some of the correspondence that the need for blasting was not expected, so we had asked for the clarification. The letter that we got from the applicant dated October 30th, 2024 from Mark Kaminsky to the planning board states that the project proposes to utilize mechanical extraction of dense materials only where necessary. Excuse me, no blasting will occur during construction activities. So based on that fact that we now have clarification on exactly what's going to happen, and there will be no blasting, my recommendation to the board would be that the answer to this sub-question would be no or small impact will occur because there is no blasting that will happen. Open up to any discussion.
Is there any discussion?
That sounds good to me. I'm satisfied with that answer.
So the consensus that this is no or small impact neighbors?
I would say yes.
Any disagreement?
Okay, next one. Sub-item C asks if the proposed action will result in routine odors for more than 1 hour per day. Based on the part 1 relevant questions and our review of other materials, the proposed action does not have the potential to produce odors for more than 1 hour per day. And based on that finding, we believe the answer to this item would be no or small impact may occur. We did look into it a little further, noting that the April 2nd, 2024 memo that was submitted to the planning board did state that anticipated impacts related to noise and air quality odors will be temporary and short duration during construction. The seeker part 1 Question DH2 asks if the action will generate or emit methane, including but not limited to sewage treatment plants, landfills, or composting facilities. The answer to that question is yes, with an estimate of methane generation being very small amounts typical of all wastewater treatment plants. The question then asks if there's any methane capture control or elimination measures included in the project design, and the answer was that covered duct collection and treatment will be provided. You may want to discuss this, or we can consider this to be no or small impact may occur, since they did state that covered duct collection and treatment would be provided, so I open that up to you. It's whether I feel there is an issue here that we need to discuss further.
I wasn't at the July 2nd meeting, but I did read the transcript from that. That was written by the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority, and it did seem to address this. I know that the waste treatment plant in particular is a concern, especially for the neighbors who are immediately across the street from it. The fact that there are residences on the property that will also be near the waste treatment plant is a little bit of an unfair comparison, because a lot of these odors are gases that are heavier than air, so they tend to settle into lower areas. I don't know if there was any provision for monitoring or a response if odors are detected and complaints are made. I mean, what's done about it?
I think this is a 24-hour number with a technical, I believe, which is what I recall from those meetings. With the response time, I think they said under like 8 to 12 hours or something, like, or even less. I think maybe said like 2 or, I don't know. It was like hours that they'd do a response if there was an issue. That detective. There's a very specific answer to that, which was in hours that they would respond.
Okay.
Because that'd be malfunctioning equipment, which is even a bigger issue, I guess, was my understanding from the response from them.
And the response wouldn't come from the applicant, it would actually come from Dutchess County Water and Wastewater.
Correct. And there'd be a number available for all neighbors and residents on the property to be able to call. Was my understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And we can verify that in the transcript.
Yeah.
Okay.
But definitely valid.
Yeah, well, I just want to be clear that it is something that we are considering, and that there are measures in place to deal with that eventuality should it arise.
And from looking at the project, I think the biggest impact for odor would potentially be that way.
Some of your thoughts on the answer to that? No small impact may occur, or moderate to large impact may occur?
I think it's low or small. I mean, it's.
They put a lot of engineering thought in the wastewater project, and they spent, seemed like at least a good hour answering questions and explaining the process. And at that time, it seemed reasonable and
So the transcription from water and wastewater has been circulated?
Just the traffic one.
Just the traffic. So if you're on the fence at all, we had, as you know, both the Secret Mafia and the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater parts of the meeting transcribed. And what happened since then, obviously, is I've asked Gretchen to go back through both of the transcriptions that have been received and to fill in, for example, speaker one, the names, so that she has compared the transcripts against the videos that were recorded and added, she's not changed anything in the transcription, but added information where the transcriber would not have known who the individual was if they didn't.
So if you want to, you can hold up on this one until you get the transcripts.
I think I'm satisfied that it would be no or small, given that there is a response mechanism in place. I know there's a history with this site, with smells that are related to the sewage disposal system that had previously been in place, but it seems like that was an artifact of the old septic tank systems and on-site water disposal systems that were abandoned in favor of the mechanized treatment system. And that this is, what's being proposed is even an improvement even upon that system.
I believe that there's other areas of the system that were not even enclosed, that are now going to be enclosed with, also in addition to that,
Yeah, so even though it doesn't eliminate the prospect that there's going to be odors, there's at least a process in place for mitigating and minimizing them.
Well, and, I mean, I find, I take some comfort in the belief that we're not going to have all of these residential units, individuals living closer to this than the people who were the residents of the manor were before. So it's in the best interests of the applicant and the buyers to make sure that this works right. They're not going to want this to fail or to provide odors because the prospective property owners are going to want to be reassured that this is going to work. I mean, what's a little difficult about this is some of it is proposed action may result, well, anything may result in something, but I think we've seen enough documentation to support that all the checks and balances are being put in place to prevent this from happening. So, some small impact may occur, possibly, but I'm satisfied that it's...
Yeah, and I do think it goes beyond the just being a speculative concern. I think it's legitimate, but I think it's being dealt with in a realistic fashion that I find acceptable.
Just to add to what you said, Craig, we noted at the presentation by Dutchess County Water Wastewater, they have a phone number 24/7 response, and they are, essentially professional operators of these types of systems that would, have the ability to get contact with them once an issue. So I hope they take care of that.
Well, they'll have an operator.
Well, that's why I said DCWA is the operator for the 24/7 calling.
But they'll have people working in that building.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to be working around the odors either.
Right.
All right, does anyone disagree with no or is no?
Sub-item D, asking for proposed action may result in light shining onto adjacent properties. Based on the relevant Part 1 questions and our review of other materials, the proposed action will include outdoor lighting. The lighting is described in Part 1 sub-questions D to N as residential styled and scaled lighting at buildings, parking areas, access, and walking paths. Light fixtures will project light downward. The applicant submitted a lighting plan and analysis by REB showing the anticipated prediction of the lighting system performance based upon design parameters and information supplied by others. The plan details the lighting layout for the property, including lighting locations, type, and a photometric plan, grayscale renderings, top view of the entire property, and an example of the proposed new condominium units, as well as detailed sheets for each of the light types proposed. A review of the light types proposed finds that they are dark sky compliant and cut off to direct light downward. The proposal appears to me to be consistent with Town Code Section 12556, including 12556.3, which prohibits uplighting, and 12556.5 regarding shielding and cut-off lighting. The sub-question further asks if the action will remove existing natural barriers that could act as a light barrier or screen. The Part 1 response notes that the landscaping enhancement is proposed to provide added buffering and screening. The Brook Farm Group LLC developed a landscape design for the proposed project. Detailed plans, including plant types and specific locations, have been provided, showing proposed plantings throughout the property at specific locations, including both proposed entrances at the manor house, at the waste treatment plant, and at the residential clusters or condominiums. Where there is an approximate 10,000 square foot area proposed for selective vegetation removal downslope from the manor house, which is to the west, to allow views toward the Hudson River and from the manor house, an elevation profile showing the anticipated view shed or sight line of the manor house from the neighbor's residence that is downhill was provided. If we assess this item further, look a little deeper, per the Brook Farm Group LLC plans, the proposed monument entrance sign was identified as having lighting proposed. The cluster residence signs are not proposed to be illuminated, so some interior signs. while the sign is not a light used for illumination, I think per what the sub-item is really getting at, we did want to note that the code does not permit for that sign to be lit per section 125-37J3. So we will need to talk about the lighting of that sign. I don't think this is a secret issue. I think this is a site plan review issue. We can talk about that later, what we're going to do for that. Again, it's not a lighting element per se, it was kind of backlighting of the sign. But those types of signs are not allowed to be lit. So we'll get into that as a site plan item, but I did want to note that. So based on my review of the relevant part 1 questions, the review of the other materials, I believe the answer to that would be no or small impact may occur.
Anyone?
I think no or small impact is what would strike me. I don't see where there would be an abundant source of light that would impact adjacent properties.
Anyone? Elise? Sean? No response? It sounds like we're all with no response.
Well, the next question, sub-item E, is actually pretty much related to this one. I won't reread everything again. It asked if the action may result in lighting creating sky glow brighter than existing area conditions. I have re-quoted all of the items that I just mentioned in sub-item D above. I'm not going to read those again, but essentially it talks about the RAB lighting plan, the parameters and details related to lighting and things like that. And the detail sheets for all of that. Again, the proposal appears to be consistent with the town code sections relating to prohibiting uplighting, shielding, and cutoff lighting. Based on the part 1 questions, I reviewed the materials. We believe the answer to this item would be no or small impact may occur.
Agreed.
So that the conclusion for noise, odor, and light related to the question and the sub-questions would then be no or small impact may occur based on the responses to the sub-questions.
Yes.
All right, so now I will open it up to the board, asking where you'd like to go next. We've finished noise, odor, and light. I was hoping we could get through 3 more of them tonight. We have historic archaeological resources, transportation, and human health. We can go in numeric order. We can pick one. Wherever one of them.
Human health. Let's do human health.
Human health.
I think it somewhat relates to noise odor. So let's continue on that one.
Item number 16, impact on human health. To answer these sub-questions, I recommend the planning board assess the item through the sub-items. They're shown up on the board. Screen, sorry. Sub-item A asks if the proposed action is located within 1,500 feet of a school, hospital, licensed daycare center, group home, nursing home, or retirement community. Based on a review of the relevant part 1 notes that there are no such facilities within 1,500 feet of the project location, review of other materials, I believe the answer to this question would be no or small impact may occur.
Agreed.
Sub-item B asks if the proposed action is currently undergoing remediation. The relevant part 1 questions note that no hazardous waste has been generated, treated, or disposed of at the site, nor does it adjoin a property that is now or was at one time used to commercially treat, store, and/or dispose of hazardous waste. There is a reported spill at the project site that is in the New York State DEC Spills Incident Database. The issues noted as having been corrected through a cleanup and tank replacement. A DEC spill closure was issued on 1/11/2011. I provided for your review and just noticed the New York State DEC spill IDs and listed those. There were, let's see, equipment failure in 2000, a tank test failure in 2000, another tank test failure in 2000, and another equipment failure in 2000, all of which have spill closures by the DEC that went anywhere from 2009 to 2012. And then there was a tank test failure in 2001 that was closed by the DEC in 2011 as well. And I have noted just for you what the date spill close means, which essentially means the DEC has considered the issue to be closed and there are no more concerns on their part. Another subset question within the sub-item asks if the site is within 2,000 feet of any site in the DEC Environmental Site Remediation Database that is not. Undergoing remediation. Right, is that right? Based on the review of the Part 1 questions, our review and other materials, the answer to the questions, no or small impact may occur as the prior spill incident. Sorry, I'm making this up. Has been corrected and the incident has been closed by DEC. So there were incidents, they were over 20 years ago, they've all been cleared by the DEC as far as I can tell. So I believe
So
we know
there's
what's
nothing currently under remediation?
correct. No other items in it.
There's not. So everybody in agreement?
Yes.
Sub-item C asks if there is a completed emergency spill remediation or completed environmental site remediation on or adjacent to the site of the proposed action. The answer to this question is yes. The relevant Part 1 questions note that there was the spill in the spills incident database that we just discussed. The Part 1 questions are the same as those referenced in sub-item B that we just talked about, so I won't review those again. Based on the relevant Part 1 questions and a review of other materials, it would seem the answer to the question of whether or not there is completed emergency spill remediation or any other remediation necessary is that no or small impact may occur, as all the spill incidents have been corrected and closed by DEC. Sub-item D asks if the site is subject to an institutional control limiting the use of the property, such as an easement or deed restriction. The relevant Part 1 questions do not indicate any limits on the use of the property, such as an easement or deed restriction. Based on the Part 1 questions, the answer seems to be no or small impact would occur. I didn't find any other information saying
Okay.
Sub-item E asks if the proposed action may affect institutional control measures that were put in place to ensure the site remains protective of the environment and human health. The relevant Part 1 questions do not indicate any limits on the use of the property, such as an easement or deed restriction. Thus, based on the answers to that, I believe the answer would be no or small impact may occur. Similar as question D.
Okay.
Okay.
Sub-item F asks if the proposed action has adequate control measures in place to ensure that future generation treatment and or disposal of hazardous waste will be protective of the environment and human health. The relevant Part 1 question notes that the action will not involve commercial generation, treatment, storage, or disposal of hazardous waste. Based on that, the answer to the question would be no or small impact may occur. If we analyze the item further, the results of this action, that being the development, would be the creation of residential housing units and associated support infrastructure and amenities, such as the buildings for common use by residents. Any actions taken after construction regarding hazardous waste materials would be the responsibility of the homeowners and the homeowners association, just as they are for any existing residential properties now, or any other new residential construction that would occur. So the question really relates to, the project being constructed itself. If there's no or small impact may occur, and anything that would happen after people are there would be the responsibility of homeowners and the HOA at that time.
Okay.
I presume that there's like a lead abatement or lead disposal provision in the construction documents that would cover the safe remediation, disposal of lead waste associated with the rehabilitation of a historic building.
Right, so it says, in New York, any commercial operator that's looking at lead has to, do that within the certain guidelines that New York State has, where homeowners can kind of do whatever they want. But Mark, I don't know if you have further thoughts on if you went into lead paint, things like that, and removal. I mean, the disposal would be per New York State regulations.
Yeah.
It's commercial, any commercial
As well as
operator.
asbestos.
Asbestos.
Asbestos and lead paint.
There's usually a requirement for receipts on the waste disposal. So you gather all your paint chips, take them to the dump.
Shaking your head.
No, it's a
You counted
license,
this
you have to
before?
have a license, operator, license to remove that stuff.
And that would be part of the construction specifications.
And
Yeah.
how is that documented? On the
It's
removal
the
of
building,
those?
the building department issues a demo plan or whatever. So the first thing you have to do is move any kind of hazardous,
So the building department
and that'll be
and
taken away
Atlantic
before.
would
That has to
ensure,
be signed off before any construction.
so it would be Atlantic in the building department that would be responsible for looking at that. And he would be reviewing any and all paperwork associated with it and ensuring that all of the sign-offs that he needs are in place. Is that what I'm hearing?
It just has to be taken to a proper disposal
Yeah.
area and not buried in a pit on site or anything like that. There has to be a paper trail for what was done with it.
Yeah. As
but that, as I'm understanding it, that would fall under Ed's responsibility. I'm confident he's done it before, because we encountered this kind of situation. Okay, so we recommending no or no?
No small impact.
Tommy, you had experience with that? Is what we're talking about?
Well, I was a licensed asbestos abatement and removal contractor in my license, and the documentation on that, for that, I'm sure that's the same way as I know.
In a good way, you're saying?
Yeah.
Maybe not in a good way for people who have to do the paperwork, but in terms of protecting the public, the documentation that's required is strenuous.
Mhm.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Sub-item G asks if the proposed action involves the construction or modification of the solid waste management facility based on the development department questions and knowledge of the project. The answer to that is no small impact may occur because that will not occur. Sub-item H asks if the proposed action may result in the unearthing of solid or hazardous wastes. The relevant department questions note that there has never been a solid waste management facility on or adjacent to the proposed project. And answers no to the question about pesticide use. Based on the relevant department questions, the answer to this would seem to be no or small impact may occur. If we analyze the item further, the only other potential related information that we have identified is detailed in sub-item B, the New York State DEC spills incident database, which, as we have noted, have spills have all been closed by the New York State DEC.
Agreed.
Three or small impact. Item I asks if the proposed action may result in an increase in the rate of disposal or processing of solid waste. The relevant department questions answer this as a yes. The action will involve or require the management of disposal of solid waste, excluding hazardous materials. Solid waste tonnage to be generated as a result of construction was not detailed. The operation, which would be eventually when the houses are built, were estimated to generate 6 tons per month. Additionally, construction waste recycling is proposed, and for operations, the project will have recycling, typical cardboard, newsprint, glass, plastic recycling. Disposal for solid waste generated on-site during construction and operation is to be taken off-site to the Dutchess County Resource Recovery Center by a private service. Again, the Part 1 questions note the proposed action does not include the construction or modification of the solid waste management facility. The board can discuss this a little bit, we already have. And we've discussed again the lead and asbestos issues. I think based on that discussion that we just had and what I found in the relevant Part 1 questions, the answer to this would probably be no or small impact would occur.
Everybody in agreement?
Sub-item J asks if the proposed action may result in excavation or other disturbance within 2,000 feet of a site used for the disposal of solid or hazardous waste. Based on our review of the information there are no such uses or sites around there, so the answer would be no or small impact may occur. K asks if the proposed action may result in the migration of explosive gases from a landfill site to adjacent off-site structures. Again, there's no such thing in the area, so I would say no or small impact may occur.
Okay.
L asks if the proposed action may result in the release of contaminated leachate from the project site. The relevant Part 1 questions answer yes, the action will involve or require the management and disposal of solid waste, excluding hazardous materials. And again, I go through the generation of tonnage of material that will be done, that will be taken to the Dutchess County Resource Recovery Agency. Again, the Part 1 question notes that the proposed action does not include the construction or modification of a solid waste management facility. It does not indicate that any contaminated leachate exists on the project site. All solid waste is to be taken off-site by private service. Given the residential nature of the project and anticipated regular pickup of waste by a private service, it would not appear the proposed project would likely result in releasing contaminated leachate. I open this up for discussion. Is there a small impact or other?
I don't see an issue.
But there wasn't a composting component that was part of this, no on-site composting?
I don't remember that's an issue.
I don't believe so.
That's the only thing I could imagine is if there was a, compost pile that was upstream from the wetlands.
Is there a composting one? I don't think.
Everything, all solid waste is going to be enclosed in bins that will get taken off-site. All right, so I would say no.
No?
No.
So then for this one, I just thought under the other element, we haven't run across a lot of these. I thought that it might be worth noting in this, when we do end up finishing 16, we file it, noting that a cross-reference to item 3 impacts on surface water, which is focused on human health, might be appropriate, specifically listing sub-items GI and K, which are questions related to wastewater, because those may play into the discussion of surface water as we get to that item number 3. So it isn't that we found an issue, just more that we would cross-reference item 3 to this one, and item 3 we cross-reference this one, just stating that we are paying attention to some of the sub-questions that were kind of simple as they relate to.
Do you want to make that as a note?
I would make it as a note under other, so what other impacts it provides a line, we can add in any additional thoughts. So I would just add in there, just note this, there are related topics of discussion to item number 3, and then in item 3, just note we were relating it back to some of the discussion we had in this one.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I think the more you can do that, the better.
Yeah, it's just a cross-reference. So then based on our discussion, and answering the sub-items, it would be no small impact may occur for item 16, question 16, impact on human health. Okay, so we've done 15 noise, odor, and light. We have done 16 impact on human health. We have historic archaeological resources and transportation.
Historic and archaeological.
Historic and archaeological, item 10. The proposed action may occur in or adjacent to historic or archaeological resource. We did already start some of these discussions previously, as you know. So obviously the answer to this question is yes. Rockledge is a National Register listed historic district. Therefore, I recommend the planning board review the sub-questions for this item. I did want to note before getting into the sub-questions, and we have discussed this several times, that it is important to note the planning board has decided that with the applicant applying for tax credits, the SHPO review and assessment will be assessed as part of the project review process. Related to that review, HAPAC noted in their referral letter dated May 12, 2021, which I did include a copy of in this memo to you today, that the vetting by the National Park Service is certainly reassuring to the preservation of the historic values of the property. The rest of the memo is in the back here, you can read that. So, obviously the answer is yes. If we analyze this item further from an overall project perspective related to the town of Rhinebeck goals and regulations, adaptive reuse of historic structures is consistent with the zoning code and town comprehensive plan. The zoning code section 12562, specifically 12562G, focuses on adaptive reuse. And the town's comprehensive plan, chapter 2, community vision, and chapter 12, historic and cultural resources, discusses historic preservation. The zoning code states, among other purposes, that the purpose of the section is to reinforce the importance of historic buildings in the town of Rhinebeck. It supports the objectives of the aforementioned special historic designations, the town's comp plan, and the LWRP, by emphasizing as a statement of local policy that the conservation, protection, enhancement, and preservation of such historic buildings is necessary to promote the economic, cultural, educational, and general welfare of the town's residents. The comprehensive plan includes an action on page 12.5 stating to allow adaptive reuse of historic structures to help preserve them by permitting such a range of uses as multifamily housing, bed and breakfast, or tourist guest house operations, providing that the reuse is subject to performance standards as part of the special use permit requirements, which include the protection of the historic structure. We are looking at a special use permit for this project. I also wanted to note that it's important to note that the town is a New York State certified climate smart community, which for the purposes of seeker is important to keep in mind as the town's zoning law was utilized and applied to create this proposed project and was part of an approved action to obtain climate smart communities points related to the protection of natural areas and smart growth within the town. So just a little kind of side note there. This proposal is for an adaptive reuse of the historic property, which is consistent with the town code zoning regulations, and the base density and dwelling types proposed are permitted in the RC5 zoning district. It has been documented as clearly visible when walking the property and looking at the structures that they are in a state of disrepair. While the interior of the buildings is not generally within the review purview of the planning board, it is important to note that the interior of the manor house retains some of the original elements that make it historically interesting and important, which and are important as they are proposed to be retained. The work that is proposed will help preserve what remains of the original interior, and the historic exteriors of the contributing structures are proposed for adaptive reuse. Okay. Now, sub-item A, control all that. This item asks if the proposed action may occur wholly or partially within or substantially contiguous to any buildings, archaeological site, or district which is listed on the National or State Register of Historic Places, or that has been determined by the Commissioner of OPHRP to be eligible as listing on the State Historic Register. The answer to this question is yes. We know it is in historic property. I think the planning board should determine the level of impact based on the proposed actions. Now, level of impact is an interesting one for this one because it doesn't really give us a ton of guidance, but I can pull up the workbook online here so we can take a look at that. But I did want to note that the proposed action includes no demolition of the National Register District contributing structure, preservation of currently deteriorating National Register District contributing structures, a modest addition to the stone barn, which is out by Rhinebeck Road. A cultural landscape assessment was done by Charles Birnbaum on behalf of the town of Rhinebeck Planning Board. There are some new structures proposed, updated infrastructure proposed, and the project is consistent with the comp plan and zoning ordinance. So the question is it, will the action occur wholly or partially within or substantially contiguous to? The answer is yes. Now the question is, do we do no or small impact, or is there an impact? Is it positive or negative or otherwise? Or I can bring up guidance if you
It would strike me as being no or small impact, given that substantial changes are not being made to the the buildings of principal historic interest. The integrity is being preserved. Character-defining features will be respected and used as a guide for the adaptive reuse of the property. And all of that is going to be controlled, monitored by the State Historic Preservation Office, owing to the applicants seeking a tax credit.
Those of us who had the opportunity, I think we all have perhaps at some time to tour the inside of the building, know that there is very little of historic integrity left. There's a fireplace and a staircase. Those things, you know, my sense of the architectural renderings that I've looked at to convert the house into these condo units is that it's been done as sensitively as it could be done. Understanding that when it was the substance abuse residence, the interior was, I don't use the word trash too often, but you know, there's very little left there. So the fact that this building is going to be saved is important. In order to go on longer, we would be losing it, and you know, it's really important and has been recognized as an important estate within the town. The modifications that have been made to the exterior for the residential uses, as they talk, will be removed, and the exterior of the building will be improved over how it looked when it was there. I've been encouraged because the circulation system, if we're talking about the cultural landscape, the carriage paths are being reused, other things that are integral to the layout of the estate have been maintained in this design. So rather than, you know, is it a small or no or small impact, I think the interesting thing here is I think the impact is a positive impact in that it will reclaim this important property rather than have it fall down. So that's how I feel about it. And, you know, SHPO will continue their review and we will get that into force. And yes, John?
Can I make a suggestion,
Yeah.
Melody, that perhaps you say a few words for the purposes of the record about what your personal qualifications are with regard to historic resources?
Yeah, I'm a retired employee of New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. I was the site manager at King's Mansion for 25 years and have experience in the restoration of buildings like this. I know they're complicated. I know what an investment is to do it, and Greg also, you know, comes with a background and a degree in historic preservation. So we're both speaking from a position of familiarity with protection of historic resources. And Rhinebeck is extraordinarily fortunate that we have a number of them within the landmark district that stretches from Claremont to Hyde Park. And so this is one of those that has a unique story. And I think the density that we talked about, that was one of the considerations in the comprehensive plan in the zoning law. to do what we could to allow. Some suggestion had been made earlier in a conversation by someone that this should continue to be a residential use, a single-family residential use. That's not realistic in this day and age. There's maybe one in town who does it, but you can't expect that to happen on all of these properties. And so I think it's an excellent example of adaptive reuse, which fits neatly into the Secretary of the Interior standards. And that's exactly what this is. It's an adaptive reuse that, in my opinion, will allow this building to continue to be an important part of the fabric of Rhinebeck. It's a little long-winded, but
Really important, thank you.
so with that, I would offer my opinion that this is a no or a small impact.
Thank you, Melody. Sub-item B, proposed action may occur wholly or partially within substantial changes to an area designated as sensitive for archaeological sites on the New York State SHPO archaeological site inventory. The applicant has noted that the database and resource mapper for the site found no sensitive resources. We did review the New York State CRIS database which identified Rock Ledge as a National Register listed site, and what appears to be the current Rock Ledge redevelopment, or I'm guessing this project, is being reviewed by SHPO and is currently shown as an open project on the website. The findings of the Harkin Phase 1 archaeological assessment identified a cistern outside of the proposed area of impact and a rectangular mortared stone structure within the southern portion of the area of potential impact. The assessment noted that due to a lack of significant cultural materials in the vicinity and the date of the structural elements, no further work was recommended. They found two isolated, is it cert flakes?
Sure.
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 Thank you. Two flakes were recovered from non-adjacent shovel test sites with no additional pre-contact artifacts recovered from 16 verification shovel tests. No further investigation was recommended for the isolated finds. Based on the analysis, Harkin did not identify any significant historical deposits elsewhere within the project, and no additional work for the remainder of the project was recommended. Based on the relevant Part 1 questions, our review of the Harkin report and other materials, we believe the answer would be no or small impact may occur to sensitive archaeological sites.
Well, in this case, you have the archaeological report that's providing the information you need to, I think, feel confident that there is not going to be a significant, or even a small, I just don't know a small impact. You see it differently, Craig?
Was there a phase 1A and 1B completed on this?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and
that's the source that he's referencing. It was completed in March of 2020.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that's satisfactory.
Okay.
So we go off.
Yep.
No
Okay.
or small.
Item C, the proposed action may occur wholly or partially within or substantially contiguous to an archaeological site not included in the SHPO inventory. As I noted above, the Rock Ledge property is not an area designated as sensitive to archaeological elements. Investigations were conducted on the site by Harkin within its defined APE, but did not identify any items that would require further investigation. We did reference the source of that archaeological investigation, requested item C on the screen. Based on the Part 1 questions and the review of materials, we believe the answer to the item is no or small impact may occur. Essentially similar to item B above.
I think it's no or small.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
And then I just want to open up because,
I mean,
historical.
it's not in the SHPO inventory. Who would have documented it?
Well, they didn't know up above the two, the
Right.
cistern and mortared stone structure.
Right.
And those have been, one outside the AP and the other that will be avoided.
But that's, okay.
I think the real risk is inadvertent discovery, pre-contact settlement, and there would be evidence of that in the phase 1B.
Yeah.
And since there was none, really the only thing would be a discovery of 19th century habitation, which we know that there was. So we have the buildings. Well, from 19, a little bit later. So.
But I agree it's no or small.
Any other thoughts on item 10? Pretty much concludes our discussion of historical and archaeological resources. So we did not come up with any moderate to large
I
impacts.
agree.
So no or small impact. Then our remaining item to go over tonight is impact on transportation, item 13.
Everybody still good? Hanging in?
I can talk about it.
So impact on transportation asks if the proposed action may result in a change to the existing transportation systems. To answer this question, I recommend the planning board assess the item through the sub-items. And so here we go. Sub-item A, ask whether or not the projected traffic may exceed the capacity of the existing road network. The applicant submitted traffic studies and an analysis of pedestrian-focused enhancements or options along the Acrohook Road frontage. The April 22nd, 2024 response letter from the applicant stated that the traffic impact assessment and updates prepared by Creighton Manning Engineering LLP show no significant traffic impact from the project using standard traffic engineering practices. Any traffic volume increases due to construction traffic will be temporary. Traffic studies also include an environmental rating quality of life assessment that showed the area roadways will provide good to excellent conditions after the project is complete. As the board knows, we asked for additional professional assistance on this from Stephen Mafia. And you received reviews and input on the transportation element of the project from him, including a June 13th, 2024 memo in which he stated, quote, in my professional opinion, the associated trip generation and level of service, or LOS, analysis provided by CM, or Creighton Manning, are acceptable evidence that the activity associated with the 36-unit condominium complex on Acrohook Road will likely have minimal impacts on traffic, pavement, and pedestrian safety conditions in the general area. He also noted the following, quote, the CM, Creighton Manning, trip generation estimates may be low as the development would not generate trips like a typical multifamily development. Multifamily development was used by the applicant for the trip generation numbers. So he's saying that the trip generation estimates from Creighton Manning may be low, in his opinion, as the development would not generate trips like a typical multifamily development, because those are typically located in areas where some trips are walking trips and others are done by public transportation or car ownership is generally lower. Such non-automobile trips are unlikely at the Rock Ledge site. Higher trip generation is likely to occur, but he also then said, however, even at higher rates, the volumes of additional peak hour and daily traffic would be easily absorbed on the adjacent roadways. Mr. Mafia also provided a response to comments follow-up memo dated August 1st, 2024, where he noted that a statement made that, quote, traffic on Acrohook Road will at least double is accurate, but somewhat misleading since the existing traffic on the roadway is less than 20 trips during the highest peak hour. He further stated, yes, the increase on Acrohook Road south of the project site is double the existing traffic. However, in assessing the potential impacts, 18 new trips during the peak hour represents an increase in volume that will have little or no impact on travel conditions on Acrohook Road and other surrounding roadways. Based on the relevant Part 1 questions and our review of other materials, including Stephen's presentations and memos, the proposed action does not appear to be or be anticipated to result in traffic that will exceed the capacity of the existing roadwork. Based on that information, it would seem that the answer to the question is no or small impact may occur. I'll open it up to the board.
Jim, isn't this like based on how long you'd wait at like a stop sign or?
That would be level of delay.
Level of delay.
A, B, or C. We're talking about total volumes and whether or not those volumes would increase to the point of starting to create delay or safety concerns or things like that. We don't really have, we don't have signals where we have level of service decrease. Stop signs can be, but he didn't find any issues based on his review.
Craig, did you want to comment?
I've spent a lot of time driving up and down this street, and I find it to be very quiet. And I think even doubling the amount of traffic, what this seems to be saying is that even doubling the amount of traffic does not really have a significant negative impact. I mean, you could park a car and get out and do push-ups. You know, it's rare that there's another car on the street with you. And I'm sympathetic with people who've grown accustomed to this being quiet all the time. But I don't think that it's going to be a tremendous impact to introduce the level of traffic. And I appreciate what Stephen Mafia added about how the placement of this development, where it is in a rural location, invites some different analysis, which he himself makes. And I think that's a very fair treatment of the context of the property, and the fact that there is going to be a lot more reliance on cars, which it would be nice if there were a better accessible network of bicycle paths and mass transit throughout Dutchess County. We don't have that, and I don't think that this development is going to prevent that from being developed in the future.
One of the comments he made, and I don't remember if it's in the meeting or, was that it would be anticipated that if it were not this project, there will be a project here at some point. And so there is an expectation that whatever happens there, were it not this, something else, there will be an increase in traffic, other than it remains that single residential home. So, we have to, I think, fold that into the, yes, there will be an increase in traffic. Whether it's acceptable or not is the question, I think. Others, comments? Anyone?
I mean, I don't think any of us like forward to doubling the amount of cars on our road, but I do recall him in the scale of trying to analyze this from a rural perspective, and it's all scaled out very specifically. It still led to what we would consider low impact. And so I'm trying to also consider his expertise in this.
It's a tough question.
It's relative to what's small, is that the?
Yeah, it's just a, yeah. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's still small, but what is now there is very small, right? And so it's, I think it's a scary thing to review. It's just the small, very small to small, what is that?
So minuscule to small is incremental.
It is a substantial in a lot of ways. So I think it is a tough question to answer.
I don't think it really rises to the level of needing like additional traffic control, like, oh, you gotta put a light at that intersection.
It's not 150 apartments, right?
Right, or this, what is a one-way stop sign, it now has to be a four-way stop because there's more congestion. I don't think we're anywhere near that being needing to straighten out the roads. I know there were some issues brought up about, oh my gosh, what if a school bus is going down? And I happened to be on that road when there was a school bus, and there is a really narrow choke point. But once the bus was moving and I was moving, we were able to get by without a problem. And there are similar choke points on other town roads. And I just don't envision that this is going to be a significant problem with the added traffic.
Did Mr. Mafia recommend, or did he suggest that there were other things that were town-related that could happen on the road?
That's what I was just.
Be they signs, additional signs, I know we talked. I know we talked at length about the suggestion that we might be able to decrease the speed. All of that relates to what the town could do, not what the applicant could do.
This is the memo on the screen.
Yeah,
We've recommended some such as some warning signs, some notification signs
Right.
that would, to look at it.
And is that something that the town board, as a result of this, could recommend? Generally speaking, not specific to this road or to roads in general?
Since Stephen has recommended, I think the town board could take that as a recommendation and put up some signs.
So we could pass on this step with Stephen Mafia. I still want to find Stephen Mafia transcript to the town with something coming from the planning board saying that we recommend they take this under consideration.
No, we'll see some sort of increase on that road. And
Well, I think it behooves us to behave in that
I think
way.
regardless, I think there's some challenges on those roads. But we
Yeah,
can
if you
pass that.
send that through Alan, you can kind of, it can be accompanied by an explanation about why it's being sent up.
I think one of the things that, and I've driven over the roads, I don't know them as well as some of you, but I do know. And I think one of the things that I noticed is, and I think he talks about it in his memo, that there's the traffic coming out of this unit, this residential unit, can go in two ways.
This is, we're not driving everybody to go in exactly one thing. There are ways it can disperse.
So the increase isn't being driven on one road in one direction. It's not like a one-way thing. It forces everybody to go one place. So that leads me to think that, you know, there is an ability to sort of reduce.
Yeah, there's actually like 3 different ways. I mean, that's, yeah, there's, you're gonna go Burger to Acker, or you're gonna go to Primrose, basically, so. There's distribution points, and I think everyone that lives in that area uses those, depending on which direction they're headed. I think it's North Small, but I think it's, you know, it's a really tough element to assign to a rural little road.
I know one of the things that Stephen Montia had said, and I don't know if this was in a sidebar or if this was in an open meeting, but some of the features of the roadway from Berger to Acker Extension in particular sort of act as traffic calming measures. The fact that there are trees so close to the edge of the road, the fact that the road is narrow and it winds in areas. So, you know, efforts to try to straighten that out would really be misguided, because that's going to lead to higher speeds, which is going to aggravate other issues. So again, I don't think this rises to the level of requiring that for safety's sake. And that's probably a good thing, because it's able to retain its rural character in spite of the fact that there's going to be a development now.
Could you scroll down just a touch?
Yep, so I put the questions up on the screen, just the analysis, which is essentially what we're talking about, the perception, the increase in traffic, things like that. And this is the guidance for, you know, small or moderate to large impact. Yeah, we'll get to this one next, so that's, we'll stop.
So if you're looking at Norwich, it's talking about substantial traffic.
Yes. And or the road not having capacity.
I think it falls in there. No, minor, small.
No, we're still, I know it's a tough one. Are we agreeing?
No or small impact, yes.
The next one, sub-item B asks if the proposed action may result in the construction of paved parking area for 500 or more vehicles. There are 48 existing parking spaces on the property, and 76 spaces are proposed for a total of 124 parking spaces. Based on the Part 1 questions and our review of the materials, the answer to this question would be small, no or small impact may occur. We're not meeting that threshold, and that threshold is a specific one. Sub-item C asks if the proposed action will degrade existing transit access. The relevant Part 1 questions state the proposed action is not within a half mile of public or private transportation services or facilities, and that the project itself will not include access to public transportation. Based on the relevant Part 1 questions and our review of other materials, the answer to this question seems to be no or small impact may occur. Analyzing this item further, the closest transit route to the project is the Dutchess County Transit Bus C line that runs along Route 9 through the town of Rhinebeck. The nearest designated stop locations are in the village of Rhinebeck. There are no private transportation services that regularly serve the Acton Road area that we're aware of, though one could hail an on-demand rideshare service for a ride if wanted. Given the distance from the C line, it is unlikely this development will have any notable impact on transit, positive or negative, in my opinion.
I agree.
Therefore, I would say it's no small impact. Sub-item D asks if the proposed action will degrade existing pedestrian or bicycle accommodations. The key to this is existing. The relevant Part 1 questions state that the proposed action does not include plans for pedestrian or bike accommodations or connections to existing pedestrian or bicycle routes. Based on that, in our review of other materials, the answer to the question would be no or small impact may occur. If we analyze this item further, currently there are no existing pedestrian, bicycle, or pedestrian accommodations along the project road frontage or through the project property. Bicycle and pedestrian users in the immediate area and throughout the town of Rhinebeck must share the road with vehicles. The nearest bike facilities are on-road shared use New York State Bike Route 9, located along Route 9, and New York State Route 308, New York State Bike Route 308 along Route 308, based on the New York State DOT Bike Routes Viewer Map. These are both several miles on-road distance from the project site. A review of the Parks and Trails New York Trail Finder map shows no bicycle trails to potentially connect to in the town of Rhinebeck. A review of the Dutchess County Parks and Trails map shows the nearest official hiking trails are located in Bly Marsh, with the trailhead located on Bly Road, approximately 1.5 miles on-road distance or 3/4 of a mile straight line distance from the proposed location. Additionally, the June 13th, 2024 memo from Stephen Mafia stated that in my professional opinion, the associated trip generation level service analysis provided by CM or Creighton Manning are acceptable evidence that the activity associated with the 36-unit condominium complex on Akron Road will likely have minimal impacts on traffic, pavement, and pedestrian safety conditions in the general area. Based on the relevant Part 1 questions and our review of other materials, seeing the answer to this question would be no or small impact may occur.
We'll open it up to the board.
Right. I have a question for you,
Yes, okay.
and I see the bike in the background. There are, going through Rhinebeck, some bicycle paths, trails,
Yes.
that are marked with signs.
Yes.
They're not on this one, is that correct?
They are not, and in fact, they are quite a bit more dangerous as far as the amount of accommodation that's made on shoulder sides and with the level of traffic on those very well-traveled routes. And I have seen people on my travels riding bicycles, and they seem to be unperturbed, just riding in the middle of the road, and there's very little traffic.
The reason I was asking is because, once you have that system in place where they're actually putting signs directing people where to go, that to me constitutes somebody saying it's okay to do it.
Yeah.
But it's not on this road, they're in other places in town.
Yeah, and I think it's more when they laid out the New York State bike paths, they were just figuring the most expeditious point from A to B,
Right.
not necessarily the most bike-friendly route.
Okay.
Then I think it's more small impact.
Did you have something from your perspective?
Just that I don't see, even at double the amount of traffic, where there would be disruption or disturbance of the bikeability of this to go around.
Okay. Everybody in agreement? You thinking?
I'm thinking I won't recommend biking those roads to begin with.
Okay. All right. So are we in agreement it's no or small impact?
All right, somebody to me asked if the proposed action may alter the present pattern of movement of people or goods. Relevant Part 1 questions state that the proposed action will result in the modification of the northern driveway entrance to improve alignment and provide sightlines for full access. And the southern driveway entrance will remain but be limited to emergency access with some clearing proposed to improve sightlines. The April 22nd, 2024 response letter from the applicant states that the project does not involve the development of any new roads or road extensions. The June 13th, 2024 memo from Stephen Mafia stated, I conclude that in the neighborhood surrounding Rockledge, residential growth and new traffic on the scale proposed by the developer would be expected and reasonable and would not have negative adverse impacts on the adjacent roadways. Based on the Part 1 questions and our review of other materials, we believe the answer to this would be no or small impact may occur. We're not actually creating any new roads, we're just modifying slightly an existing driveway. It doesn't impact any pattern of movement or goods.
Agree?
So with that, I believe that for impact on transportation, utilizing the sub-questions there in item 13, the answer to this 13 would be no or small impact may occur. With that, I believe we've gone through the four that we're going to get through tonight.
We have, perhaps you'd like to give us a preview of the November 18th meeting and what we're anticipating, hoping, planning.
Yep, so we, as you know, we've gone through, a good chunk of the questions now. We have a couple of them left. For the 18th, we are planning on having Christian here from CPL to go through these with you, and I will be talking with him ahead of time about this. He is going to do the review and the memo on the impact on land. He will be doing the impact on surface water, the impact on groundwater, the impact on flooding. And we might be doing impact on plants and animals, I have to double check that one. But he will be here on the 18th to go through those with us.
And you will have a transcript from water and wastewater in advance of that meeting for your review, as you have with the transcript.
And then, and I was just gonna say, and then if and when we get through those, if it's that, meeting or the next one, the final meeting would then be, if we're not doing plants and animals with Christian, we would do that one. And then the final two would be consistency of community plans and consistency of community character, which are 17 and 18, the last two questions on each. And that would get us through the part two.
What number is plants and animals? Seven?
Seven. I just didn't know off the top of my head.
I'm not prepared for that tonight. Any comments or questions? Any additional information, anything you'd like us to structure? Christian coming in, process working for you?
Yeah, I think Jim's notes are extremely helpful, and I think always reflecting back at what is really small. It's just really difficult to put that in our small town. What is small and big? And so it's on. There's no cookie cutter approach, and I think it's super helpful to have both. So thank you, Jim.
I think it's helpful to go to the handbook, guidebook, from time to time. That really, when you're in that sort of gray area, I think having those examples up there. Because some of these are worded in a way that it's a little difficult, the shalls and the mays and all of that language.
Right, and that's why the part two specific states the last item, answer the question in a reasonable manner considering the scale and context of the project. And, again, the reviewer is not expected to be an expert in environmental analysis. So, you're doing your best job based on the work you do as planning board members to answer these questions. The information and everything.
Okay. I think you all have the schedule of regular meetings. Why don't you take it with you tonight, take a look at it, and come back if you see any issues with this. And we'll give Gretchen authorization to go ahead and do what she needs to do with it at that point. So if there's nothing, there's the first one. There's an option we can discuss for the first meeting in January. The town will be having its annual reorg meeting on the 6th, which is the first Monday, as they typically do. Last year, we delayed our meeting. We were supposed to start at 6, we started at 7:30 instead. I figured their meeting took a lot less than that. We have the option of either trying to have a later start that day or defer it to Tuesday the 7th. If you have an opinion about that, if people are going to be away, if the 7th is a problem, it is far enough into that first week that I wouldn't object to it going over Tuesday, so we don't have to come later and stay later, because I'm hoping we're through the bulk of this, but we may be spilling into January as well. So, would everybody be okay at this point with the 7th, the Tuesday? Okay.
Yeah, but why not the Monday?
They don't normally conflict with our meeting notes, the town board, but they'll be having their reorg meeting because it's the first Monday.
Yeah, okay. Right, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you, everybody, for your attention and your input. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.